Thanks so much for joining us for the Smarter Balanced Digital Library User's Guide webinar, 10 Tips by Teachers for Teachers. This webinar is brought to you by Smarter Balanced Digital Library in collaboration with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year. On behalf of Smarter Balanced, we want to thank the National Network for their ongoing partnership and for hosting this webinar. But before I turn over the reins, I'd like to introduce myself and talk a little bit about our goals for today's webinar. So on the next slide, you'll see our pictures here. So I'm Heidi Krug. I'm the Director of Supports for Instruction for Smarter Balanced. And on the line as well is Amy Theory. She's our Assistant Director of Supports for Instruction. And I can just pause here so she can say a quick hello.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. We're so happy that you're here today. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
So both Amy and I will be on the line throughout this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A or chat. So on the next slide, you'll see what our goals are for today. During this time, we're hoping that you will learn how to access and navigate the digital library. That's our primary goal, helping you get in there and use it. We want to help you find the resources you need as quickly as possible, including both instructional resources that you can use in your classroom, as well as professional learning resources that are often used in professional learning communities, for example. And last, we want to show you how you can interact with your colleagues across the consortium and state within the digital library. So let's talk a little bit about what the digital library is and why you might want to use it. So the digital library is an online collection of educational resources contributed by educators for educators. So the focus of the digital library is instruction and professional learning. So that means it's filled with high quality lessons, activities, and materials that are all linked to state standards as well as the formative assessment process. And they've all been developed, tested, and approved by your fellow educators. The resources are designed to help you extend and supplement your curriculum and boost your instruction to meet students' needs. So why use the digital library? It could be that you're an instructional coach or you've been tasked with guiding a PLC. You could use the digital library to find professional development activities and ideas, for example. Or maybe you're a teacher looking to boost your instruction and engage students. So the digital library has over 3,000 resources that can align with your needs. Or maybe you're a teacher who's given one of our interim assessments and you want to check out some ideas about what you can do next instructionally to meet students where they're at. In this case, we have our playlists, which you'll learn a little bit more about today. But the playlists are collections of resources that are all linked to Smarter Balanced interims. And through these actions, you can also engage in the forums to make connections with fellow educators. So again, thanks for joining us here today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine.
Hi, everyone, and I'd like to echo everyone who's already thanked you for coming. We really do appreciate your time. We know how busy teachers are and how much demand there is on your time. So we really do appreciate that you've chosen to spend an hour of it with us. My name is Catherine McClellan. I'm the research partner on this project and have had the pleasure of working with both NNSTOY and Smarter Balanced Consortium to create these tips for you. My collaborator in this work, Leanne Stevens, unfortunately is unable to join us tonight. She has a family situation where she needs to be at the hospital, unfortunately, and she doesn't have access to stable Wi-Fi and it's noisy. So Leanne asked me to pass along her regrets. She would love to be here. She's been a huge contributor to this work and we're grateful to have her involved. And we're sorry not to have her here tonight. So we're going to walk you through various aspects of what the website looks like, what you need to do, how you interact with it, things to look for, all sorts of great tips that teachers from the National Network of State Teachers of the Year gave to us when they, involved in this study, came and looked at the website, used it, downloaded resources, used materials in their classes, and generally beat it up to the extent they could. And then they gave us all of their feedback about what they found helpful, what they found it confusing, if anything, although truthfully there wasn't much of that. The teachers both basically tended to find this website extremely intuitive and easy to use. Smarter Balanced invested a great deal of effort and time in getting the website redesigned so it's easy to use, and they were very successful. So the first thing you'll see is that you need to register. So when you first start to use the digital library, you'll be asked to register for an account. The digital library is accessible to people who have an email associated with an authorized educational institution in a state that participates in the consortium. And you can see on the screen there's a list of the states and the basic things that you'll be asked to fill out. Once your eligibility is verified and they check that your email address is from an authorized educational institution, you'll receive a welcome email from smarter-do-not-reply@smarterbalance.org. You may need to verify that that email address is whitelisted with your IT people. So otherwise, make sure you can receive it. Your welcome email will have your username and a temporary password, like a lot of websites do. And you'll need those to get started on the site. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. And then once you log in, you will change your password. So one of the things it's useful to know is that it makes a difference which browser you use with the website. So you want to start smart. You want to use the right browser. You can use Chrome, you can use Internet Explorer 9.0 or Safari 5 or higher, and those will work the best. For those of you who are Firefox users, I have bad news. The site is not optimized for Firefox, so it will probably work, but it won't work quite as well. So if you want to optimize your experience, you want to use one of the preferred browsers, and you do have a fair amount of choice there in terms of which ones those are. When you log on, you're going to be asked to complete a profile. Then you're going to ask for content areas you're interested in, grade levels that you teach or that you're interested in, and student populations that you might interact with. This can all be changed easily once you're on the site. But spending time doing it when you first enter means that the materials you see as soon as you log in will align with your interests all along. So that's an asset. So we recommend, as a tip, that you spend a few minutes doing this. This, at least to me, because I'm an impatient creature, often feels like it's keeping you from all the good stuff you want to see, but it really is worth investing in, because once you log in, the materials you see and are presented with when you do searches are matched to your personal interests. So it's a great thing, and the site will remember those interests and it will know who you are. So it's worth spending a few minutes thinking about telling the website what it is you're interested in, who your students are, and what content areas you're interested in, so that you can see things that are directly related to your personal concerns. Once you log in, of course, the thing you're going to want to do is find materials on the digital library. That's why you're there. So it's a great resource, and there is a lot to see on the website. The top left side of the screen, you'll see the image that we have loaded here on the screen, and you see three major areas: instructional resources, professional learning, and the playlists. And because they don't want you to have to keep all of those in your head, they even provide somewhat more detailed descriptions of those things just below them in the tab bar. So each area is described in more detail there, and they serve as a useful reminder of what's in each area. And you can either click on the definition or you can click on the tab. So you have multiple ways of accessing all of these areas. You'll see that the instructional resources is where a lot of classroom activities, resources for lessons, enhancing instruction, supplementing curriculum. So those are the materials that really relate directly to, am I looking for something that I need to teach next week on this particular content area? Go to the instructional resources tab. You'll almost certainly find something that you can use. Professional learning resources are intended more for educator professional development. So maybe for discussion in your professional learning community, mentoring, coaching, other things where you want to interact with another colleague. And the playlists are actually really interesting. They're collections of digital library resources that focus on the same or similar content, and many of them are leveled for students who are at or above the standard, close to the standard, and below the standard. So they have different activities and different skill focus for each of those levels. And we'll see some of those later. But those are actually really useful assemblages, and Smarter Balance has put together a surprisingly large number of those. So they really are a major asset. So like most teachers, you may go to the instructional resources first because it's a sort of obvious choice. Most teachers are looking for ideas and ways to supplement or improve their own personal instruction. So many teachers come to the digital library searching for resources to use. If that's you, then you're probably going to start here. When you do, you'll see a list of filters here, and you see there's actually a pretty extensive list, and each of them has a little blue plus, which indicates there's things under that you can see. One thing that's useful about this is here's where you'll first see the time you invest on your profile, because the filters will already be filled out. So you don't have to go through and click every single little tiny box to make sure that you're seeing the things you want to see. The website automatically imports the information you gave on the profile into this section. So you can certainly add things, you can remove things, you can change things very easily, but the website has already pulled in a lot of data for you, which is really, really helpful. So when you expand these, so I've expanded one here just on the Common Core standard. And you'll see I happen to have expanded English language arts. So the arrow at 1 shows the first overall place you could expand something. And the arrow at 2 shows that I've expanded the English language arts. Arrow at 3 says I've chosen the 2nd grade. And the arrow at 4 says I've chosen a reading and literature component. And the arrow at 5 is actually a really useful tip there. If you don't remember what all the standards are by the letters and names and numbers, and many of you may have them memorized, but if you don't, if you hover your mouse pointer over that standard, it will pop up this window and show you the definition. So you'll see that there's a read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it, cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. That is the hover over definition for CCRA R12. So if you don't have those in your head, the site will very conveniently hand them over to you with the mouse hover. And you can refine your selections for these filters for specific standards, for media types, audience and end users, unless you narrow the selection down even further so that the results are very specific to what it is that you want to see. You can specify an educational use, such as a lesson or a unit or assessments. You can choose attributes for your formative assessments. Pick your focal grade level, student population type. When you first go there, you'll see a long list of resources selected for you based on what you put on your profile. And there are lots of ways to sort and manage this list too. So here I've given you an image of one of the instructional resources. This one happens to be a math one on generalizing patterns using tiles, leveled at grade 9. It's primarily a document. When you pull this list of materials up, you'll see that they're sorted. And the default sort order is driven by that little green check mark that you see circled in red there in the image. Check mark means that the resource comes recommended by all of the reviewers who evaluated the resource for the digital library and are considered to be posted with distinction. So they put the best of the best at the top of their list in the default sort order. And keep in mind that the reviewers largely are your colleagues, people who do what you do in the classroom, who teach, who work in the rooms, teach the same subjects, deal with the same students, because you've been able to specify all of that on your profile. You also see over to the right in the gray box, this particular material has 270 views, 49 downloads, and has been rated by somebody, but only 1 rating. Still in instructional resources, you'll see up at the top, the search I did, I got 276 results, which is obviously a lot, and they are created into pages. So you see the numbers across the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to next and last. There are a list of materials on each of those pages, and you can search within the results just by clicking on the white box that's shown there and typing. If you want to sort them in some other order other than the posted with distinction default, you have the option to do that. This sort of teal box that is circled in red here on this image, if you hit that arrow, will pull down the list you see over to the left. And you can sort them by the newest materials that have been uploaded the most recently, the ones that have been viewed by the most people, the ones that have been downloaded by the most people, or the ones that are highest rated. So you're free to rearrange the criteria to suit yourself and find the things that you're looking for. So here's our next tip. When you are sorting, it's worth being thoughtful about doing it. So if you sort by the ratings, for example, you may eliminate something really good from your top results that just hasn't been rated yet. Might be pretty new, no one's had a chance to look at it and no one's rated it yet. So think carefully about sorting these things and take some time to go through the multiple pages of results that you have. So looking at a specific resource, we're going to work through looking at this particular one to give you some sense of what it's like. So this is an ELA grade 7 and 8 resource, teaching parts of an argument to students. You'll see in the teal box over to the left, it says multiple media, And the description includes this video entitled The Anatomy of an Argument, explains the three main parts of an argument. So one thing, like I said, this multiple media, and it's now circled in red to call it out to you, might be something you actually really want to know. You may want documentary things primarily, or you may want multiple media things primarily, and the site gives that to you up front, so you don't have to click through into the resource every time to find that out. It tells you right up front immediately. But when you click through on this particular instrument, you're going to see something that looks like a Word document, which leads us to our next tip. The website, because it does contain so much material, it often has multiple pages of results or a lot of components in a resource. We want you to watch out for the markers that tell you there's more somewhere. There's more going on. There's more stuff you can see. There's more things to find. So there are examples such as the loading dots on the bottom of a page that indicate the site is pulling up more resources for you, arrows, drop-down buttons, and lists. And we're going to highlight a few of these just to make sure that you see them, because they're important to making sure that you get the best use and maximum benefits from the website. So here, teaching the parts of an argument to students, I've clicked into the resource, and this is what you'll see. And as you can see in the window, you see what looks like a Word document. It starts possible ways to use the teaching parts of an argument student learning plan. And you'll see in the black bar, it's described as a document, a docx. So it's a Microsoft Word document. And that's the only thing that will show up on this particular resource when you click through to it, unless you click on the green button, which is circled in red here, that says View All Materials. This is one of the places where there's a wayfaring indicator, in this case, that button that says View All Materials. And when you click on it, you'll see the drop-down list that's right below it, which shows the document and shows the anatomy of arguments below it. That's the video. So you don't necessarily see everything in the preview window, so it's important to click on the View All Materials button and make sure that you find and access all the materials associated with the resource. This one has multiple components. It has the document, it has a video, and you won't necessarily see that unless you check View All Materials, so it is really worth looking at that one. Another wayfaring indicator and button that's of great importance for most people is the download button. When you click on this, the system will create a package, a zip file for you, and it will download the materials to your local computer, which you're probably going to want to do if you want to review them, look at them, or use them in your classroom. That button is circled in orange in the image that you see, so that gives you an extract to your local computer. And another thing to pay attention to when you do this is what exactly got downloaded. Because if I download this particular lesson, you'll see at the bottom of the slide, there's an About This Resource Acrobat document and the Parts of an Argument Student Learning Plan Microsoft Word document. But the video's not there. The videos don't always come with, not all the components come with a download. Sometimes the expectation is that you would play the video directly from the website. There's no need for you to download it. So pay attention to what shows up in your downloaded file. It may or may not have included every single file you saw, because there are some where the expectation is you would use them from the website. So in this case, the Anatomy of Arguments video that we saw in the previous slide is one we expected to run from the website directly. For each of the resources on the About This Resource tab, there is a list of descriptive topics for it. And the list is, as you can see, pretty extensive. You see there's summary, there's attributes of the formative assessment, and connections for the formative assessment process, student engagement, specific connections to the standards, learning goals, success criteria, context in which the resource could be used, supporting evidence, and some literature or research associated with it. And each of these has a paragraph of text that describes it describes each of those things in some detail for that specific resource. And that's all down the right side of the page for any resource. The teachers who participated in our study indicated to us that the summary, the learning goals, and the success criteria were their most used components on that About the Resource tab. You may have other choices. They just told us these are the ones they went to most often as their sort of go-to choices to explain whether this resource was going to be the one they were looking for, or whether they should go on and find something else. Once you've found a resource that you want to use, may or may not have downloaded it, but you can save them in your favorites folder. This website has a lot of personalization that pays attention to what you're doing and lets you save things, which is really, really convenient. So you can click the favorites link in the header bar and it'll take you to your profile where you can save things, you can organize things, you can make folders of all your favorites. And in addition to the favorites link that is on the resource page, there is an add to the favorites up at the top. So there are several ways to get access to that as well. The website is very attentive to people being able to access things easily from multiple sources. And this is one place where that happens. So you have an add to favorites link up at the top too. That's a quick add. In the About This Resource tab, you'll also see a list of attributes down the left side of the page. And note that this is not all the attributes that this resource has. The list is quite long and I couldn't get it all on one slide. So the image is much bigger than this and I had to trim it down. But you can see at least some of them. And they cover numerous topics from subjects and domains through the specific standards, assessment targets, grade levels, the required technology. The list is long and very detailed. And each of those things is not just text. It's actually a hyperlink that will take you to another page with more resources that share that attribute. So if I clicked on the first one, which is marked with the green arrow that says ELA writing, this will take me to other resources that have that same attribute of ELA writing. The same thing is true if I click that standard in green there, the CCSS ELA literacy W81B, that one will take me to other resources that are referenced and aligned to that standard. So there's a great deal of information sort of hidden behind all these links. So it is worth clicking around and checking. And that's our next tip. We do recommend that you look for links. A lot of the text is also a live link. It's not all blue, which I think all of our expectation is that hyperlinks are always blue, but it's not always blue on the digital library. So it is worth trying to see if things are live links. They frequently are, and they're linked to related materials. Sometimes they're linked to explanations or other useful things. So it's worth clicking around and exploring. There's a lot of things where if you hover your mouse over it, you will get some information or text that explains what you're looking at. So it's worth spending some time finding what exactly does this particular piece of the site do. Another tab that's really useful in the digital library for each resource is this one, the related resources, because you may have searched and found something that was close to what you wanted, but isn't quite it. So if that's the case, then the materials in the related resources tab may be exactly what you want because they'll share a lot of the attributes. And they'll be similar grade level content, all the things that you care about. So they may be exactly what you wanted if the thing that you pulled up didn't turn out to be precisely your best fit. Note that there are a couple of wayfaring indicators on this page that are worth noticing. At the bottom, circled in red, you'll see 3 dots. That indicates there are actually 3 pages of related resources, not just one. And the arrow off to the right, also circled in red, is the way you access those 3 pages. So it will take you through them, and once you click it, you'll get arrows on both sides. So it's trying to this website is trying to tell you there's more and more stuff to see. So pay attention to these wayfaring indicators and click on them. Check out what's there. So that related resources tab, the materials there are going to be similar in content area, grade level, or formative assessment attributes. So they have properties that are related, hence the name, I guess, to the thing that you were looking at. So they can take you to a lot of really useful things. Heidi mentioned the playlist, and I am very impressed with the playlist. I think this is a really great resource. They're collections of materials organized around a theme or a group of standards, and they can supplement an existing academic unit with new and engaging activities for your students, but they minimize the time required for you to locate a cohesive set of activities and standards and skills. So someone's already invested that work for you, and they really are remarkably useful. They're structured around student performance relative to the standards, and they may also help you support differentiation in your classroom. So if you go to a playlist, what you'll see is something like looks like the display that's on the screen. And that pre-assembly is really a huge asset. And a lot of them have recommendations for students who are below, at, or near, and above the standard, which helps with the differentiation. Many of the documents look like the one that's displayed on your screen now. This is a high school playlist for Read Informational Text, and you'll see the green above standard area. Students are working to solidify certain skills, and along that column at the above standard, at or near standard, and below standard, you can see slightly different skills for each of the students who are working on reading informational text. They're all reading informational text, but depending on how close they are to the standard, they're above it, at it, or below it, they may have different skills they really need to work on to build themselves out into understanding informational text more effectively. And over on the right, you'll actually see recommended next steps and resources. So all of those blue links are links to things that will take you to another resource. So you have resources and skills broken out for you, aligned to standards. This is a large amount of work for someone to have done. These are really a huge asset, and they're great. So if you're feeling, what about me? All this great stuff is for the students. There is also professional learning available on the website. The materials provide guidance on the Common Core State Standards, instructional practices, approaches for specific content, assessment techniques, and support for interventions and differentiation. The materials can be used in the professional learning community, coaching, mentoring, individual professional development. They're really like a broad set of materials and have a lot of uses. One of the things we've mentioned sort of intermittently throughout this discussion has been the idea of the alignment. That's really important. If you are in a state that participates in the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, has to have materials that are aligned with Common Core State Standards. These materials on the digital library have already been aligned. Someone has made the effort to go through the alignment process and determine whether or not a resource is aligned to a particular standard. That simplifies your life. It makes finding things quick and easy. These lessons are tied directly to standards-based teaching. They're tied to related assessments, which is handy unless you evaluate student learning. So this is a real asset of the digital library, is that this stuff has all been pre-aligned with the Common Core State Standards. The other thing you can do is interact with other users. Heidi mentioned this briefly. There are forums on the website, places where you're intended to be able to interact with other users. And you can see that there are a number of filters that let you find forums that might be of particular interest to you. Digital Library is an interactive site. There are a number of ways you can interact with other members. The forums are probably the main way. And the existing forums can be filtered by any of the things you see there, by subjects, by grade levels, formative assessment attributes, participants, student populations. If you have a particular group that we want to focus on, you can just sort and filter those things. And there may not already be a forum on the topic that's of most interest to you, and that's fine. You can start a new one. You can start for your grade level or your PLC or whatever the content area is that you're the most interested in, and then track members to join you so that then you have new colleagues to interact with and people to bounce ideas off and discuss how teaching a particular lesson might have gone. Tip number 10, be prepared to persist. The digital library, like I said, is a really rich resource, and there is a lot of material there. So you might not find the exact thing you're searching for the first time you search for it. So you may have to uncover a lot of the great things that are there with a bit of effort and some familiarization. It is worth the time. It is worth the investment. There is a lot of material there to look at, and there's a lot of material there that's very usable. And remember, these things have been contributed by your colleagues who have tested them in the classroom. They've been reviewed and approved. So there's a lot of work that's been done for you. Everybody knows that the teachers have constant demands on their times from all sorts of directions and have lots of places where you can search for ideas or supports to use in your classroom. Every teacher wants to use their very limited time effectively. The digital library is a great resource with much to offer you. Because of the large variety of resources, the search for just the right one may be a little overwhelming the first time you try. Plan to take some time the first time you go to the site so you don't feel rushed. The initial prep time will reward you with very useful and relevant teacher-driven resources that will ease your lesson preparation and provide you with an array of high-quality lessons, ideas, and references. There are 2 resources which have been posted recently to the digital library site. I have the links here, and we will post the documents so you can have access to them. One of them is a quick start guide that helps you get just into the library and gives you some basic instruction. We also have a document with the tips from this session, and the links are there on the page, and we'll make sure we get those posted into the chat. And that is the end of the formal presentation. we'd like to take questions. If you guys have any questions we can answer, Heidi and Amy, who are our world experts on the digital library site, are here, and we're all happy to help you with anything you might want to know.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I just wanted to mention while we wait and see if there are any questions, that we did post the links to both the Quick Start Guide and the user guide in the chats.
Great, thank you so much.
And feel free for attendees that have questions, you can put them in the chat, or I believe there's a Q&A as well. So I see one question. If I link the playlist to our site, are they going to be updated regularly, or could I check yearly for updates? So thank you for the question. That's a great question. We currently, if you link a playlist to your site, if you pull the URL from the digital library, that would be my recommended way of kind of linking to the playlist, because we don't anticipate large changes to the playlist, but we do know that there are some holes that we've been working to fill. And as we do so, we'll be updating the playlist with those kind of minor changes over time. However, if you link directly to the playlist in the digital library, every time you use that live link, you'll get the most up-to-date version of the playlist. So that would be my recommendation. If you have any follow-up questions, please ask, because I think I understand the question, but I just want to make sure. Since that was a question about the playlist, maybe I'll take this opportunity just to mention that we will have all playlists will be available and posted actually just next week by February 16th. So that means we will have one playlist for every Smarter Balanced Interim Assessment block available. I believe the total number is 108. So by the end of next week, you should have the full suite available to you. Well, I don't want to keep us on the line too much longer. I know how precious your time is. Maybe I'll just mention as questions come up, because they probably will as they do, feel free to copy down both my email address as well as Amy's and reach out to us with anything that we can help with, whether it's a particular need that you have or whether you're looking for some tools to help excite the educators that you have at your school. Just feel free to reach out to us. I'm just double checking the chat to see if there are any additional questions here. I don't see any. Catherine, should we go ahead and wrap up?
Yeah, I think we should. I just said this in the chat, but we are eternally grateful as ever when busy teachers take time to spend their precious evenings coming to a webinar and learning about the digital library. It's a great resource. It really is worth your time to go and log in. So I strongly suggest that you go to the website, get registered, get an account, and get in there. There's a lot of things to see, a lot of things that are very, very useful, and a huge amount of work that's been done to make them as valuable as possible for classroom teachers. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.